Thank you so much. Really honored to be part of this forum. And now, can you see my image? I want to share my presentation.
No, Salvatory.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So thank you so much for your kind invitation, and it is really an honor and privilege to be part of this forum. So today I will only present a synopsis of slavery and changing landscapes of 19th and 20th century Tabora in Western Tanzania. So as you also rightly introduced me, I'm senior lecturer here at the University of Dar, but I have also been working as a postdoctoral fellow at Ghent University in Belgium. So my study centers on Tabora, and this is Tabora. Tabora is in Western Tanzania. And as you can see, it was located at the center of the caravan routes from the coast here, Zanzibar, Bagamoyo, Kilwa, going to the interior. And traders from the interior carried various items for sale. And this second map shows various sites of goods that were traded, but also goods that were also carried from the interior to the coast. And this is the image of the caravan on the march, walking on foot from the interior to the coast. And because Tabora was strategically located at the center of the caravan route, it therefore attracted slaves, residents, including Omani Arabs and Swahili traders from the coast, who, in response to the demands exerted by the Zanzibar commercial empire, also engaged in slavery and the trade in ivory, and of course forestry products. So slaves in Unyamwezi or in Tabora came from different parts of the East African interior. So first, we have records that indicates that slaves also originated from Tabora, which is also commonly known as Unyamwezi. They also came from central Tanzania. Others also came from Uganda, but we also have records that shows that slaves also originated from Rwanda and Burundi. And most importantly, the majority slaves originated from Eastern Congo. And this has also been referred by economic historians as arguably the richest in slaves. And by the second half of the 19th century, we read from sources that the slave population in Tabora accounted for 75% of the entire population. And of course, owners, as I have rightly pointed out, of these slaves involved in Nyamwezi, Omani Arabs, and Swahili traders. Now, farming in Unyamwezi entirely depended on slave labor. And because the town itself was located at the center of the caravan route, it was therefore necessary to produce, to grow various crops in order, first of all, to feed the resident population, but second, in order to feed the passing caravans. And of course, rice was also grown in order to meet the increased demands for residents and the passing caravans. Now, in 1860s, Richard Barton, on his way to the interior, described the region as the land of promise, the great harbor, and in Kiswahili, it's the great Bandari, or the meeting place of merchants, and the far-famed land of the moon and the rice land. And this therefore shows the extent to which residents in the region, relying on slave labor, engaged in agriculture in order to feed both the residents as well as the passing caravans. And this is the image of Eastern Unyanyembe, depicted from Speake's Journal of the Discovery of the Nile. In 1860s, it shows that Unyamwezi was dominated by hills and valleys, and this, in a way, were generally fertile. Okay, and the next image shows rice farming of one of the slave owners from the East African coast, called Siboko. And from this image, the clue that we get is that both men and women were also engaged, both male and female slaves were also engaged in farming. And the next image shows people taking provisions to the passing caravans, and this was also one of the caravans in 1860s, and it therefore suggests that as caravans passed in various villages and towns, residents now took the advantage of taking provisions to the passing caravans. In addition to, sorry, are you getting me?
Yes.
Okay, so in addition to Siboko, whose image I have showed here, is that we also have a description of another with a Swahili resident originally from India, who also became one of the founders of the town. And of course, we get this from James Grant's journal of 1862, describing his household, consisting of both domestic and field slaves. And we are also told that these field slaves also grew rice to feed residents and the passing caravans. Now, by 1908, because of the increasing demand for food and, of course, other items, we are told that almost the farmland in Tabora town was along the old caravan route. And this is therefore the image that shows where the old caravan route passed, which later on, the central railway was also constructed. We see now people had farms along the old caravan route. Now, in addition to Tabora town, we are also told from primary and secondary sources that also chiefdoms were also established, especially the headquarters were established in strategic locations, especially on areas with fertile soil and water sources. And we learn that these chiefs also obtained slaves from, first of all, from Western Tanzania, but second, from the Manyema region, which was definitely described as one of the richest regions in slaves. And this is the image that shows the location of some of the chiefdoms in rural Nyamwezi. And here down, this is the caravan route from Ujiji in Western Tanzania to the coast. And although environment, especially here, fertile soil, attracted a great deal of settlement, but also farming, but it was also advantageous to the passing caravans, especially slaves who could not withstand the long march to the coast. So in some areas that had a soil fertility and perennial water, we learn from the sources that these areas also prompted desertion of slaves, who in consequence established villages of runaway slaves. So I have also been working on this region, and as I was collecting data, I encountered testimonies of descendants of former slaves who told me about specific villages that were established by runaway slaves. And these villages were strategically located, were first of all close to the caravan route, and they were established in an area that had, and of course still has, soil fertility and perennial water. So this therefore implies that the environment could also, in a way, be used as an advantage for slaves who could not withstand the long march to the coast. And this is the former caravan route, which is still preserved by the Ministry of Tourism. And it is this place, which is close to this place where former slaves, especially who ran away and who could not withstand the long march to the coast, established these villages. In 1922, or before that, I think I should also put it clear, is that in Zanzibar, the slave market was closed in 1873. But the closure of the slave market in Zanzibar did not mean the end of slavery. So slavery continued in the interior, and it was until June 22, in 1922, when the British government abolished slavery through the Involuntary Servitude Ordinance. Now, after the abolition of slavery, former slaves looked for new opportunities where they could earn their life beyond the limits of slavery. And in 1930s, we of course know there was a Great Depression, which had far-reaching impact on the lives of former slaves who were living mostly in Tabora town. And we are therefore told that the Great Depression left the Omani Arabs and Swahili residents in economic crisis. So as an alternative to the dilemmas of the Great Depression, these former slave owners relocated to rural Unyamwezi, and to use the concept of John Ayleaf, these former slave owners colonized new land and engaged themselves in farming and settlements in rural Unyamwezi. And this is now the image, it is the map that shows changing land use and changing settlement pattern. One could definitely see here that before 1930s, population was clustered around these centers of the Central Caravan route. But after the abolition of slavery in 1922, followed by the Great Economic Depression of 1930s, residents, especially in Tabora, in Urambo, and other places, especially along the former Central Caravan route, relocated to rural areas, especially in North Unyamwezi, because these were fertile. And they now, if we use the concept from John Iliff, they now tended to colonize new land in northern Unyamwezi. And this is, in short, what my work is all about. And because the time might perhaps not be my best ally, let me please stop here and thank you so much.